This summer, Simon Moro, Terry Hart, Knobs, an audio production podcast. Remember to like and subscribe. Let's get this party started, baby.
What's the topic today?
The topic is the foundation of a mix, as it's called, or the bottom end, getting that to work and being nice and thick and gooey and sexy.
Oh, yeah.
Because the US do it well, right? Like if there's one thing to say about albums that come out of the USA, the bottom end's just, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's as big as it possibly can be before speakers start falling off walls.
So the tangents and the directions that we can take this, I'm going to jump into something kind of crazy straight up.
Good. Nice.
60 hertz
60
versus
hertz?
50 hertz in the power.
Okay.
Do you think it affects the sound?
Yeah, I've heard it, because this is an interesting one for those who don't know much about circuitry. There is what's inside the box. What goes into the box is AC current, which will run at 50 or 60 cycles depending on where you are in the world. But as soon as it goes into the box, it's rectified and it's direct current, so it doesn't have that. That being said, there is a slight amount of ripple that's left. There were old bits of gear that were tube rectified, like old guitar amps definitely, but even a lot of old compressors, the Federal being one of them. That was originally tube rectified, and that didn't completely filter out everything. So there's people that argue that one sounds better than the other. The listening I've done, I really haven't heard much of a difference.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have an opinion about it. It's more just a question of, is that part of the sound of a continent?
Like from a physics perspective, it should do something. But I mean, so many mixes are coming out of there that are completely in the box. Although I guess that waves and all that do have a switch of whether you want 50 or 60 hertz, don't they? So
that in theory should just be the hum, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, way to derail the start of the podcast, Simon.
we believe it.
Okay,
got through the gates.
Bringing it back to the foundation. I love this topic because it's something that I think everybody struggles with, and we're going to share some ideas of how we tackle it. But I think...
You know what I love is the word.
What?
The word foundation for it. Because you have to build everything off that.
Correct.
And there's nothing. Everything will sound too bright. Everything will sound too pokey unless you have that solid foundation. And it's the same as a house foundation. It needs to always be there.
All the weight is there.
And be stable and be constant. And then you can do whatever you want on top.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, bottom end was very, very difficult for me until I got great monitors in a great room. Like for me, because it's such a difficult thing to work on, until you're in a great monitoring environment, everything that you do is blind.
Yeah, absolutely. You're better not to touch it and just leave it to the master engineer at that point.
Almost. Yeah, almost. Because when you're making moves that, I mean, we know that you can have a 30 dB plus or minus boost just from your room.
Yeah.
And without knowing that's happening and just using your ears and your monitors in that room, you're going to be making some decisions that are 30 dB in the wrong direction. Yeah. Which is huge. So let's talk about where would you start? Do we want to start with things to do in the mix, things to do during recording, or start with monitoring?
Well, I mean, we could follow the production through from start to finish. It seems like chronologically, that's a great idea because with recording, you need to get the bottom end. Yeah, ideally you have it perfect straight through the mics, but that's not the world we live in. We always have to do a little bit to make it perfect. But a lot of places where tracking facilities that I've been at, they don't have decent monitors for me to be able to judge that.
Yeah.
I don't need to know that the bottom end's really good. I just need to know it's there.
Yeah.
And I'm more interested in that. I feel like I can always get top end back.
Yeah.
Never really had a situation where I've had a problem there, but I need to know that the bottom end's there and it extends well into the subs for anything that's relevant for. But even guitars, like if I've got a chunky, even just a solo tally, I want to know that the bottom end sub 100 hertz is grabbing and thick and gooey. Otherwise, it'll always sound wiry.
Yeah. So let's start at that from the recording part of the process, and just keep in mind that every decision that you make through the process is going to be impacted by the monitoring environment. So when we get to the monitoring bit at the end of this, we're going to share like techniques and ways to help you throughout this. But so presume we're talking about this in an environment where it's easier to make decisions, but just this stuff is what you need to be aware of from the beginning. I want to start with an electric bass.
Cool.
So I noticed this in my late teens, when I was learning how to record. And my stepdad's a bass player, and he has some beautiful instruments, some like vintage Fender Jazz, P-Bass, Stingray. And I remember when I was playing bass, like recording my parts down, and then he came in and re-recorded it. Same instrument, same channel strip.
Yes.
And the note
different
that he pulled,
fingers.
It's like how did it go from this sort of fairly thin bass with no definition?
This is why guitarists suck as bass players, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
It was just so round and so sustained. Same instrument, same channel strip, the fingers.
Yeah.
Same instrument. So I think this is something, that we have to accept, that not all musicians are created equal.
No.
And it's the very first part. And if the player doesn't have it, then everything we do on top of that is going to be compensating. So I thought for me, the difference was so huge that I was like, how did you make that low end feel so contained and so sustained and so round when I couldn't do it? So
people accuse bass players of that all the time, like you're playing one note. But no, they're putting more concentration into someone on the acoustic strumming out, just banging out a C chord. Like there's a lot of emphasis on the groove in where the note finishes as much as where the note starts. And that's one of the only instruments that does that. So it's so important to get that right. But yeah. And I'd say this for guitarists as well. You can throw the guitar into the hands of a bunch of different people and that instrument will sound different every single time, depending on how it's attacked. Yeah.
Of course. And I feel like you can get away with guitars that are a little more lo-fi. But if we're talking about getting that solid foundation, it's really difficult to get with a lack of experience. And then you reach to other tools down the chain to sort of compensate. So that's an instrument-related thing. If we were to move the conversation to, say, kick drums and floor toms.
The room. Find the spot in the room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in the same way that a standing wave will cancel itself out in a room. So if you're standing, say, in the middle of the room, you're going to null out whatever the frequency is based on the dimensions of your room. If you place a kick drum in that part of the standing wave, it's going to cancel that frequency in the kick drum.
Yeah.
So
and you'll never get it back. She gone. Yeah.
Exactly. So, one technique is carrying the floor tom around the room and waiting to the point at which it sings.
Yeah. And it goes back to what I was saying before. You need a good bottom end, more important than anything else. Just find the biggest thing you can find.
Yeah.
Unless it's a ridiculous thing. Sometimes a room has the opposite of what you're saying and
correct
constructive interference. If it's a bit sort of flabby and loose definition because it's so boomy, not there. But just look for as much bottom end as you can find. You can't go wrong.
Yeah. You just want it to sing. Or just put 57s right on the skin and do drum replacing.
I don't know why people mess around, to be honest.
Why do we even bother getting good sounds? So the room is going to interact. The room is going to interact with your acoustic instruments in the space.
And it's a good, like acoustic guitars, I'd say the same. I do run around until there'll be a place where that thing has some body and a lot of places where it doesn't.
Yep.
And so it's really important to find that. And I still find that tom trick works really well for that. I might not go for the crazy boomy bass that I would with the drums, but just running around on a stage and where you start to feel it bloom a bit, we'll put the acoustic there. Yeah. You're going to have enough bottom end to play with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to preamps, I think there's a massive difference between entry-level preamps and high-end preamps.
Yeah.
And I think the very first preamp I bought was the Mindprint N-Voice, which was a single-channel sort of boutique company, and I would put them as it was Project Studio. They had a $4,000 preamp, but I don't know how much better it was. I think it just had more features. And then from there, I got the TL Audio Ivory VP5051. I think you might have one as well.
I do, yeah.
Which are actually great on kick drums, ironically.
Yeah.
And at the time, like early 2000s, these were a $2,000 channel strip, but that was considered Project Studio.
Yeah.
It's not until you sort of step up into...
And it was a tube preamp as well.
A tube preamp, yeah. And that particular one, I think, went through 6 half sides of the tube.
Yeah.
Whereas the other things in the Ivory range went through, I think, 2. But anyway, so I'm talking about any preamp, any channel strip that's sort of sub $3,000 or $4,000, with the exception of a few. Like I would say the sleeper preamp for me is the Focusrite ISA 1.
Yeah.
You can get them for $600 secondhand.
And they do sound
great. They
great.
sound great. And the 610 pre-Universal Audio, I think that's a bit dearer, maybe $1,200. That's also great. But I just remember...
Unless you want to crack out the soldering iron. Yeah. And you can get some great ones.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you can, DIY. But I just know the difference between one of these, well-marketed entry-level clones versus the real deal. What I lose is at both ends of the spectrum. Yeah. Because to my ear is the low end becomes less contained. Instead of having this defined space when it comes out of the speakers, it kind of wobbles around the room, a little bit fuzzy, a little bit uncontained. And I also lose the top end glassy silkiness.
And it's weird because if you put it through a spectrum analyzer, it's there, but it's not pretty. There's something that those meters don't really show.
Yeah.
It's the top end's there, but it's brittle. It feels like it's going to just fall apart. The bottom end's there, but it's not.
It's not a foundation. It's not solid.
Yeah.
It's not contained.
You can't trust it. And when you try to EQ it, you really notice. You try to turn it up and just nothing's happening. Yeah.
And look, you might be able to answer this. My thought is that a major part of it is the power supply. Mm-hmm. And if we think about what analog audio, the power going in is what becomes the bass, is what becomes the vocal. Yeah. So if the power going in is dirty and the power supply that is in the box is not great, then you're basically putting cheap ingredients into the sound.
You are, but I mean, look, there's a lot that goes into it. How quickly that power supply can supply a voltage differential is going to make a massive difference, especially when you've got like really low frequency. The power of it's basically everything underneath the curve. So when you're looking at a 30, 40, 50 hertz cycle, there's a lot of power there. It needs to be able to deliver voltage to that very quickly to be able to recreate a transient. And this is where we get like the term slew rate. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to have that slow, but it needs to be done in a cool way. This is basically what the sound of a Neve is, whereas an API or modern, 990 bass preamps are the opposite of that, but they're crisp and clean and right there. But yeah, power supply definitely. If it's a voltage regulated thing, they're not all created equal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, preamps I think make a big difference to getting that tight, contained, low end foundation. And then moving on from there, I do think converters make a difference.
Yeah.
And, like you can argue.
It's hard to put your finger on though, but I always just think of it as like throwing a sheet in front of the speakers.
It's a fogginess.
It's just not quite as present as you want it to be.
I think of it like a dirty windshield.
Yeah.
You can drive around for weeks and then you finally clean it and you go, I can't see the glass anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like the low end converters, I see the glass.
Yeah.
And, people do argue about, there's no difference, and, these UAD converters are the best in the world. But if that were true, we would not be spending $20,000 on converters.
Look, and I understand why people can get stuck on that. It takes years to train your ears to be able to hear a lot of those things.
That's true. But
it's a cumulative effect. So if you're sitting there and you're recording a bass guitar and you have the world's best Lavery Gold converter next to an M-Box one, you might struggle to hear the difference of that one channel. But I guarantee you, if I did 90 channels through one converter in a mix and 90 channels through the other, it would be night and day.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, when I talk about the cheap stuff isn't as good, it's not about you've got to buy the expensive stuff.
No.
For me, the reason why I'm sort of saying it is more so that you can go easy on yourself when you don't get that sound.
Yeah.
So you go, okay, it's not me. It actually is the tool. And I'm allowed to blame the tool. And I've taken this tool as far as I can take it. So that's what I mean by this is like, wouldn't it be great if we all had $1 million facilities? It'd be wonderful. The reality is we don't, but we also should not be blind and think that this entry level stuff does the same thing.
I have a lot of like young singer songwriters that are doing their own demos, and they've been told that they need to buy like a decent compressor and a decent preamp and a decent mic. They don't really need the compressor. If they just spent that, if they focused that on the preamp instead, they'd be doing a lot better.
Yeah, and a good plugin, sure. Yeah. Anything else pre-recording?
There's a lot, but let's move on so we don't drag it out. So production.
Okay, well, I guess the production-wise, we can talk about, are we augmenting sounds?
Yeah.
So with kick drums, are we adding, are we doing the old sine wave tune to the tonic of the song and triggering it with a kick drum with a gate across it to add the low tuned subs? Or are we blending samples? Are we layering sub bass synth with the electric bass? I mean,
this is where you need to be careful because in the extreme bottom end, layering's not really a friend.
No.
But if you need it, you need it.
No.
But you want to – there's no rule of thumb that the extreme bottom end should really come from one source, and it's going to be cleaner that way.
And I agree with that. And I would say and I notice sometimes when people send me stuff to mix and they've got 3 basses, I will find the one with the solid sub and I will high pass the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, let him do the heavy lift in.
Or if they're not playing the same line, then I'm going to use something like Track Spacer to pull the subs out of the less subby basses when the subby bass is there.
Yeah.
And I think
to create a solid foundation.
Because what happened, and this is all auditory masking. Well, there's 2 things. One is auditory masking, and the other thing is we're affecting our headroom, and we're affecting any dynamics processing that is seeing all these signals.
And that is a huge issue here. Like masking's basically 90% of where this is hard. And the way I like to think of that is to come back to photography, something else that's now sample based. If I took a picture of your gorgeous mug against the sky and I zoomed right in, well, there'd be a spot where your ear and the sky sort of blended into one square pixel. And it wouldn't be pink and it wouldn't be blue. It'd be an amalgamation of the two. Well, digital masking, would you say, is more or less the same thing? When you start to get bottom end information landing at the same time, well, they're going to come together and try to occupy the same space and do a dumbed down version, a grey version of either.
Yeah, and fundamentally, auditory masking is just that if there is more than one sound source with the same frequency, the ear will kind of disregard the quieter of that group. So it might as well not be there. Like we don't get any benefit for having 100 hertz.
I think I was getting confused. I was doing digital masking. You were doing auditory masking.
I'm doing auditory masking, but in terms of this, like, is that sort of same thing? Like they're both stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
And what you lose is the definition. It's not a punchy kick drum. It's not a punchy bass. It's a blur of somewhere in between.
Yeah. Or worse yet, it just if they are masking, it's masking. That means you're focusing on one more than the other, which you might want, but you might not want as well.
Yeah.
You don't want your kick drum to disappear behind that massive sub bass.
No.
You need it there. You want that thump. You want that groove.
Yeah. So this is where we need to be aware of the interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another example of an instrument that can really affect the low foundation is piano.
Yeah.
So I'm very often pulling low end out of the piano to give the bass space. And I think this is one of those things that,
which is crazy because as a pianist, the bottom end of the piano is
it's weighty.
It's so important and such a big part of the expression of the instrument. But I hear you.
Yeah.
Like I'm often like high passing that at like 200 just to get room for things. Yeah.
And if you're mixing a song that's got piano in it, you can't just necessarily high pass the whole thing.
Mm.
What I'll often do is if the piano is the intro, well, now I'm going to split that piano across 2 tracks. One's going to be piano intro or piano verse 1, all the low end.
Yeah.
Then the next one, as soon as the bass joins it, the bass is cut out of it. And because of auditory masking, I'm not going to suddenly think the piano sounds thin because the bass now is carrying more energy in the low end than the low end in the piano would have had.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have heard it anyway, and now I've just got more headroom back, more clarity and definition in the low end of the bass. So it's that counterintuitive thing of my bass and kick aren't focused and defined.
We need to do something about that.
The piano's the thing that's making it
identifying. And this is where the mute button's your friend. You listen to your mix, just mute an instrument at a time and see what's doing it. Another trick I use for piano specifically is mid-side EQ. Just pull all the bottom end out in the middle.
Yeah. Because
most people do it stereo, so the bottom keys are going to be up the left side from player's perspective if you're doing it that way. That can definitely help in those situations.
Yep.
But it definitely can't be a full-bodied classical style piano.
No. But it's also important to be aware that if there is a moment that is just the piano, you got to put it back.
Yeah.
So I think auditory masking is the cause of a lot of ill-defined low end and sort of foundational stuff in a mix. And I guess we got to the auditory masking tangent from layering samples and layering sounds. So this is where it's just important to be aware that as you're layering sounds, you've got to be asking why you're putting them there. Like what is the purpose? What is the function? Yeah. So I was mixing a rock record and there were so many layers of guitars, so many layers, and the song still sounded thin and empty because the band, I didn't produce this, I was mixing it. The band thought, it's not big enough. The sound isn't big enough. I know, I'll just do another guitar.
Yeah.
But it was actually a composition and arrangement issue.
Yeah.
Because you could have something with one guitar, bass, like an AC/DC song, huge.
Yeah.
So you've got to ask why do I need 3 layers of bass?
Yeah.
Do I is the problem that the bass line's not good? Is the problem that it's in the wrong register, the wrong key? Because just adding more might not be the solution to what you want.
No, and especially like to diverge slightly, like what you're saying about guitars, it's such a common issue that so many people do because they've read it in some mix magazine. But if you want to do that, it has to be done very, very carefully and changing amps and guitars for every single take and voice-ins. Put a capo on for the next one and higher up for the next one and change those voice-ins. Then you can do it. But if you're just using the same guitar, same amp, same mics and the exact same chord progression, you're not layering anything.
Yeah.
You're just taking the cut out of it, basically.
Yeah, and depending on how precise your timing is, there's going to be moments of phasing.
Yeah.
So in that sort of production phase of building the foundation, be intentional. And I know this is almost going to backtrack a little bit, but given that a lot of people are doing this in the box, not with live instruments, I again thinking of times early in my career and I remember recording a band. Same mic setup, same instruments, same day, same engineer. Everything was the same. The difference was the song. One song sounded big and weighty. The next song sounded thin. What was it? Well, for one, the drum part in the one that sounded thin was really busy and messy.
Yeah.
And the guitars were playing up, 5 steps up. So pitch-wise, everything's up higher. And the drums are really, really busy, whereas in the song that sounded big, the drums just boom, ga, boom. So there was space. There was space for the air of the kick drum to bloom.
So there's songcraft as well.
Exactly.
There's arrangement, yeah.
So arrangement is also a big part of the, getting that foundation. But I think a key takeaway here is that adding more will not make it bigger necessarily.
No, it has to be done with a plan in mind.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to add more. There is the other side of the coin here. One thing about foundation, and I was just going through this in a hip-hop track I was mixing earlier, you need it. It needs to also be there all the time. And I understand there's slow songs like the one you're talking about where you have a big boom and a cut. But I think in those sort of situations, you'd have the snare quite bottomy to compensate for that. You'd have the bass filling in the gaps there. The important thing about this is I hear a lot of amateur mixers, and it's the bottom end doesn't feel like it's always there. It sort of ducks in and out. It's sometimes really, really too much because of that, and the rest of the time it just thins out the mix. And when that bottom end goes, everything else sounds brittle. So a really important thing is that it is consistent across the track, and that becomes its own rhythmic creature because of that. If we're just going to go like the vanilla setup of a bass guitar and bass drum, which is commonly what you'll come across, having them sort of, I can't really do hand gestures on a podcast, can I? But massaging each other, like flowing together and giving a rhythmic bass, which is always there and is enough to keep your head grooving without the rest of the song. That's a big part of what, or at least what I mean when I say foundation, that's always there and always consistent.
Yep.
So sometimes, you do have to add stuff in to achieve that, to get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just about being intentional. A quick tangent to a decision-making process for me, like when I was sort of trying to analyze what happens before I do something in the mix or production. And for me, it begins with a recognition of a desire to change the sound. So there's this little instinct of, I want to change the sound. And then it's, what do I want to change? Is it multiple things? If it is, which one do I approach first? And then of that thing that I'm approaching first, is it one thing or is it multiple things? And if it's multiple things, in what order? And then I have something actionable. So for example, if there was a whole bunch of things I wanted to change, but the first thing I wanted to change was the kick drum, and if the kick drum, I wanted to remove some muddiness, add some low end and some attack, well then when I instantiate a plugin or reach for a channel strip, I have a goal in mind. So I'm not staring.
It's not just out of habit.
I'm not staring at the parameters blankly.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, when they say, I just don't know what to do with the thing, it's like, well, if you don't know what to do, then don't do anything.
Yeah.
Like for me,
that's not about. That's when the mix is finished.
Exactly. It's like I'm not memorizing settings here.
Yeah.
I've had a recognition of a desire to change the sound, and I've determined that this tool used in this particular way is going to get me closer to that thing. And
this is why presets have broken people's brains, because they think that, oh no, that's what the pros use on a kick. It's like, they don't. If it didn't need anything, they'd use nothing.
There are plenty of times where there's nothing.
And to go back to your masking, another great one before you even reach for that, well, let's just mute a couple of things that might be causing this issue that I'm hearing as well. Like there's still that avenue.
Exactly. So this just comes back to being intentional, because if you know what you want to do, then the sort of scratching your head and staring at settings and plugins and whatnot, trying to figure out what the pros do, like that, it's not a thing. It's like if you know the goal, which is I need the bass to be rounder. Well, what tools do you have at your availability? Mute the piano. Oh, I don't need it to be fuller. I just needed the piano out of the way.
Yeah.
Now I can address the piano with a high pass filter, because that's one way to get the low end out.
Yeah.
Or I could do use track spacer on it and send the bass to it, or I could use a dynamic EQ and sidechain the bass into. So yeah, that when you're intentional and understand the tools, this whole thing becomes so much easier.
Well, then it's mixing.
Exactly.
We've segued into mixing without even meaning to. So we're there now.
We're mixing. Hooray. Well, if the production's done, all you need to do is put the faders at unity, isn't it? And then
pretty
bounce
much
it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Mixing, our favorite bit. Where do you want to start with the mixing? Where do you start?
It's always going to depend on the song, isn't it?
Correct answer.
But I mean, I do like, again, that rhythmic interplay between the two, which is, and I did mention it before, but I think it's really, really important to understand, is that the word groove to me means the release of a note or where it ends. And this is something very, very common if you talk to any violin or classical musician. They're quite used to seeing a note on a page, and that note is played for 2.5 beats, and then it stops, and then there's a quaver rest, and then there's a crotchet, and there's, you know what I mean? Like it's very precise, not just where the note begins, but where it ends. Now, in modern music and with modern arrangements and bands and things like that, nearly all instruments are percussive. Drums, obviously. Guitar was originally in the percussion part of like old big band scores and things like that. It was grouped with the percussion, because it's basically if you strum a guitar, it's basically a shaker with a tone, with a note. Piano's pretty percussive. Not many. There are ways to play it where you have a rhythm where
Didn't
it comes
James
off,
Brown say like everything's drums?
Everything's drums, and he was kind of right.
Yeah.
The one exception is bass. The greatest bass lines are creating groove specifically with where they end the note, not where they begin it. So that's your only avenue to create groove in the song. So making that work, and the obvious counterpart to that will be the kick drum together, is such a big part, and I'll be looking for that to work, because sometimes some bass players are better than others, like you were talking about with your dad. If that's not doing it, like what can I do to make that work? And that's where I think, sidechain compression can be a friend, because you can get a bit of a suck and bloom thing happening, which can be rhythmic, but trying to make it feel as groovy as it can, so that if I just listen to kick and bass, my head's bopping. Doesn't mean I'll necessarily start there, but that's my aim.
While we're talking about groove and low end, have you come across the theory around low frequencies and our experience of gravity?
No.
It's pretty trippy, and once you hear it and feel it, like, you will never undo it. But basically, low end makes us feel heavy, and the absence of low end makes us feel light. So that's how a groove works. When you So when you listen to it, like exactly when you were talking there, like the importance of where the note stops, because
I do think of it as grounding.
It is,
and it's another reason why the word foundation is so great.
And if you think about like our bodies and being, large percentage of water, and the sub frequencies just exciting, like we feel heavier, we feel our body more on the ground, then it disappears. Like, hey, I can jump. And that is, if you watch people, dancing and grooving, they're down when the bass is there, and they're up when the snare is there.
It's called the drop.
Yeah.
This all makes so much sense. Yeah. This is hilarious.
Yeah. So it's a fun thing to do if you've got some loudspeakers somewhere, and you can find a song that's got a groove where the bass is there and then stopping, there and then stopping. An old song that you could do this with is James Taylor, Smiling Face. It's got a cool rhythm section and the bass groove, and it's got long sustained notes sort of in the first half of the verse, or the first sort of couple of bars, and then it goes to grooves like do, 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 sort of like legato, and then bum, da, da, dum, da, dum.
It's that jump between legato and staccato that just everything, isn't it?
So it's like, I'm feeling heavy, now I'm bouncing.
Yeah.
And I'm down when the bass is there. This is Dallas, the special guest for this week.
Apparently she's got opinions on bottom end.
Bit of a woolly sound. So low end can affect our experience of gravity. We feel heavier with the presence of low end. So just interesting, when you were talking about that.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing to hear. Like that, it just sort of blows the mind because it's one of those things that you feel like you knew it as soon as you said it. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, that does make perfect sense.
After we finish recording, we'll chuck some songs on and have a listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think like a Jackson 5 was another good one, or anything based out of those Motown bass things. Like the bass lines in that was so specific in what they did.
Yep. So, yeah, groove. Starting with the groove, I suppose the instruments. Are you sort of starting by balancing? I guess the most important instruments or elements of the track first, and then starting to process, or are you kind of identifying a handful of tracks to then sort of start working on?
Well, I like to hear how it's all working through the processing. There is bus processing and mix bus processing happening, and I try to get that going pretty early.
Yeah, same.
And I think it's one of the quick ways to completely ruin a mix is getting that wrong and not taking into account what that does to the bottom end. And I did develop a bit of a trick for that from back when I didn't have great speakers and great monitoring, because it's a difficult thing which a lot of people are going to come across. But just after all your processing, put a low pass filter, maybe at 200 hertz, so you can hear what that processing is doing to the bottom end.
It's a good idea.
And sometimes you'll go, oh, that groove is completely off and lost because of it. And you didn't hear it because you're always focusing on what the top end's doing and all the clippy clappy parts and all that, but you'll hear that it's absolutely mincing it. And I still use that trick today when I'm mastering. I like to make sure that what I'm doing, that the limiters aren't crunching it out or, freaking it out too much. But getting that, pushing into bus processing the right amount so it's massaging it and it's adding to it, not taking away, is usually my first step.
Yep. So that's a great trick. The bass mixing technique that I learned from Brower was to split the bass into low end and high end.
Game changer, definitely.
It was a game changer for me. Definitely felt that I was able to control it a lot better.
Yeah.
It's almost like that. Like when I talk about an uncontained bass, I feel like it just wobbles around the room. Like low frequencies are omnidirectional, so they're supposed to fill a room, but it should fill it evenly.
Yeah.
If it fills it unevenly, that's when I feel like there's just no definition in it. And I found that splitting it into low and high just instantly made it better.
It allows for that consistency.
Yeah.
And I think we both are using an LA2A on the bottom.
Very, but a great. Yeah.
Or very mute or something but something slow and legato is the point here where it's leveling.
Yeah.
So that means that the bottom end is always there. If they slide up the neck, it's not going to be as low and it won't compress as much, but it'll keep it consistent.
Yep.
And the nice thing about having it split as well is that they're both on faders. Mm-hmm. If they do the verse on the A string or second string of the bass, you can just bump up that low fader a little bit to compensate for the bottom end that would be you'd expect to get in the chorus.
Correct. Or when all the double distorted guitars or extra layers of synths come in, you can bump the subs up 3 dB or whatever amount feels right so that you don't lose the bigness to these higher frequencies that have now come in on top.
We've said it a million times. It's just you can reach for it and do it immediately.
Yeah.
When it's on a fader and you don't think about it, it's like, I need that. It's there.
Exactly. And another thing, the way that I route it is my low frequencies, they go straight to my mix bus. They don't go through the B bus where the rest of the rhythm section and the high frequencies of the bass are going.
Yes, yeah.
Which means that
I don't always do that, but I do sometimes do that. Yeah, definitely.
I tend to do it most of the time, more often than not, and it just means that that low end is going to stay consistent even when the snare drum is compressing all of the drums and bass and percussion, and the high end of the bass is getting attenuated with the drums, but that low end just stays there
and focused and there. Yeah, consistency again. Another one for me is on the bass guitar is definitely distortion's your friend.
Low and high.
I do I mean, the high usually gets a little bit, but I specifically have a dedicated fader. And this came to just when I used to mix on a desk, I just have it used to be a culture vulture and just have the bass, the low of the bass sent to the pentode of that, so that it's only seen from like 200 hertz down, but creating harmonic content from there up. And I'll turn that up to compensate and listen on smaller systems, NS10s or something like that, until it's feeling as bassy as it does through full range speakers. And if I want to go really extreme with that, you can after the distortion, then high pass it so that you get rid of all that bottom stuff and just have the saturation, and then you can add that in as much as you want. But that makes it constant, keeps it flat, keeps it there, makes it read on smaller systems.
It's an extreme compression, just keeps it super level.
It is, but it's all a big part of that for me is tricking what most people are not going to have, which is speakers that go down to 30 hertz or something like that. Because the harmonic series will be there, their ear will tell them that fundamental's down there somewhere, even if they can't hear it. So I do think it's important to have a good amount of saturation. Whether you want to hear it or not's another thing. But I was always amazed by people I used to idolize back when I was learning and listening to their mixes and soloing that beautiful smooth bass and realizing how munted, how distorted it was. And I've always kept that in mind and just had a fader there for that. And again, another cool thing to throw up a little bit in the chorus when those heavy guitars kick in and you need a little bit more cut.
Yeah, I tend not to distort the low end of the bass. Maybe I should do it more. I guess tubes are also different. I've got the TL Audio. What is it? I can't even remember what it's called. But it's an 8-channel tube interface. It's basically just 8 in, 8 out, and it runs them through tubes with it like high voltage, and I would just run my ABCD bus through it.
Yeah,
and I just remember as soon as that's in, the kick drum just has this air that just fills the room more. And I think that tubes can do that to the bottom end.
They absolutely do.
But maybe like an IC kind of like a little distortion circuit for a guitar amp might not do too well in the low end. I certainly
if you can stick to even order harmonics, it is going to be better in those scenarios. Specifically because the bass is a pitched instrument.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be putting in weird overtones, which is essentially what you're doing. Not that they're audible, but I think they're there and they eat up real estate.
Yeah. But definitely, it is. And it's why it's so important to do things in context, because that bass that sounds distorted on its own can sound silky smooth with other things around it.
Yeah.
So if you've got a buzzy synth or distorted guitars, well, that distortion is going to mask the little bit of distortion in the bass. The bass is going to sound round again.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a cool thing to try.
But I definitely have it low. I'd say that I think I often have that at like minus 30. So it's only just there.
Yeah.
But specifically to listen to it on smaller speakers and just give it that presence that I feel like it needs.
I use max bass, Waves max bass on the low channel for that reason. I
do enjoy that in our bass for those as well.
Yeah, so for those who are unfamiliar with it, an old Waves plugin called Max Bass, which adds upper harmonics to low frequencies to make them more audible on smaller speakers. And R bass is, I think the R bass one is sub-synth harmonic, so it'll sort of go the opposite direction. Another great Waves plugin for this is Submarine.
Yeah, which is a recent discovery. That range, that couple there is quite cool. I think Smack Attack as well, I was telling you about the other day, which is a transient designer, and I love that as well. Yeah,
so some interesting things in there for low end. So maybe moving on to the last bit, maybe the monitoring side of things.
Yeah.
So as I sort of said at the beginning, all of these decisions, especially around low end, are incredibly difficult without good monitoring. And as soon as you're in a space that you can trust, all of this becomes easier because you're not boosting 13 dB because your room sucked 13 dB out. You're boosting it because it needs to be boosted. And vice versa, if you're cutting, it's because it needs to be cut. So if we think, first of all, the dream of the expensive monitors in the perfect acoustic room, like that is so far from the reach of most people. And a lot of commercial studios also have pretty crappy rooms.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with the simplest thing, which is a spectrum analyzer. So I set my spectrum analyzer up. I use the TC Electronic Clarity, and I set it up with an A weighting curve. So when I look at my mix, I kind of want to see a linear fall from low frequencies having the most energy, the loudest, and then as it goes up to the higher frequencies, it sort of falls down. So if it's left to right, bass frequencies are louder, treble frequencies are quieter, but I'm looking for a fairly straight line on the diagonal downwards, and that will indicate that my mix is going to be fairly balanced to my ears and to the human ear. If I see some unexpected peaks and troughs, then that's an indication that something isn't right, and I'm probably EQing the room and speakers, not the program material. So that's and I think I'm just thinking, is it Vox and Go have a free one? I think it's called Span.
Yeah, maybe.
So Spectrum Analyzer, that's going to be your friend.
There's Blue Cat Audio's got a free one, don't they?
Okay, yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So find a free Spectrum Analyzer and look at that. And depending on the weighting, sometimes if you look at, I think the default weighting for the Spectrum Analyzer on the Fab filter, it's not weighted, so it's even. So it's actually a flat line from left to right.
No, I do find it a little difficult to follow that. Yeah.
Yeah. So start with the Spectrum Analyzer. Moving on from there, I think probably the next cheapest option is some kind of headphone calibration.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But look, headphones in general, it's weird that they're so good at, you can get a decent idea, but then it's very hard to properly judge the bottom end unless it's loud and actually hitting you through speakers. So
yeah, but it will still help with calibrated headphones.
It's much better than an uncalibrated room.
Yeah. And it's not going to be, it's going to sound the same everywhere. So I use the Arc On-Ear with IK Multimedia that I love because it's that separate interface. And yeah, I really love using that.
But an important part of using those as well is a reference track, something that you know. I've got a couple that I know are the extremes of what bass can do. The specific, I would use a Nine Inch Nails track, Into the Void. When the bottom end, the sub bass comes into that, it's just monstrous. But I know that if mine's bigger than that, I've pushed a little hard.
Too far,
And it's you want a couple of tracks that you know and that you trust. When you pull out these calibrated headphones, or you do get calibrated speakers, you still need to know what you're listening to. Yeah,
exactly. And then I guess next is on the monitors. I think that the reality is you've probably got to spend, in Australian dollars, you've probably got to spend 10,000 and up to get some monitors that start getting really good. And I feel like the range from let's say $2,500 to $6,500, you're probably not going to get that much benefit. No. So you'd almost be better off just going with $2,000 monitors. Once you've got some decent monitors, you got to do some acoustic treatment in the room. And in most cases, something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And you're not going to treat your extreme low end. I mean, this room that we're in now has a problem with the low frequencies. It still sounds really great, but
there are no perfect rooms.
I don't have 2 meters of real estate at the back of the room that I can sacrifice for bass absorption. But something, your corner bass traps, or just, corner bass traps are popular because they're kind of out of the way, but in reality, your whole, every wall should be a bass absorber.
It should, yeah. And look, this is where you've got a lot of tools that are free that there's free room testing software. There's also a lot of free mode calculators. So if you see you have an issue at a specific frequency, 120 hertz, well, you can see that, okay, that's the long end of the room. That's where that's coming from. I know that's what I need to treat. There's ways to do this cheaply and quickly and minimalistically.
Yeah. And then I guess moving on from there is speaker calibration. And I am an advocate for it.
Yeah, because I'm not anti it, but I've always found I do better without.
Yeah,
I get used to my room. Yeah.
So I use the IK Multimedia Arc Studio, and I used the software for many years beforehand. And there are alternatives. There's, I think Trinov is the big expensive one that a lot of people use.
Yeah, okay.
I haven't AB'd the two, but I think that in a half decent room, you shouldn't need too much to make an improvement. And the speaker calibration is always going to be the last thing that you do. You basically take the room as far as you can take the room, and then do the calibration, because you can EQ a room, you can EQ the speakers in the room, but if your low end is ringing out for 2.5 seconds, well, it kind of doesn't matter that you've EQ'd it.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to deal with those resonances. So yeah, hopefully there's some ideas.
Unfortunately, there's not an easy, cheap way to do that, though, is there? It's hard. Like headphones are going to be your best bet for most situations.
Yeah, and just be aware when you're using the headphones that having a calibration that does some speaker virtualization will be helpful. Because if you're just EQing the headphones and you're still listening in a binaural way where there is no crosstalk from the left to the right, then when your mix is played on speakers, it will sound a lot different.
Yeah, there's something that's happening. You're trying to make a phantom center, which you're not getting any sense of.
Your vocals are going to be way louder than you think they are on speakers.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything in the center when you play it on speakers is going to be louder than it was in headphones.
But that's where you use it as a tool. You might have your monitors, but when you're judging the bottom end, jump onto the headphones, then back to your. But there is the elephant in the room. We haven't even discussed subs, have we? Because I'm not much of a sub guy.
Okay. Yeah, look, interestingly, I am also not a fan of subs, and that's partly because my monitors go down to 26 hertz.
Yeah.
And so the three-way, and they're closed.
It's good to have as a reference, like to jump on quickly and just check things out. But I mean, it's on for what, 1% of the day?
Well, I've got the sub for Atmos only. I don't use one when I'm mixing through the three-way monitors. I don't use a sub. And when I did have my old Genelec system, it feels disconnected. And
it's disconnected, isn't it? It sounds like it's coming from somewhere else.
Does. It's just even in this room, I've only got one sub, and it's only. I'm looking at it now. It's 50 centimeters off center. Mm-hmm. And in this room with Atmos, 11 other speakers going, I can hear that the sub is slightly off to the left.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of, as you said, if you've got a dedicated sub, it just feels disconnected. It's the same as ported monitors. I remember when I bought my Grover Nodding monitors, I had some big PMC monitors in my room at the time that I was going to purchase.
Yeah.
And I remember when I put the Grovers on, and I'd never heard bass so connected to the sound before.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a very different experience, and I didn't love it at first. But when I heard it, I thought, this is way more accurate than the ported monitors. And if I was getting speakers just to impress the clients, I would have gone the PMCs. If I was getting speakers for home, for listening to music, I would have got the PMCs, because the low end was it was so gloriously huggable.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's unhelpful when you're trying to make a decision.
It's not surgical, is it? Yeah.
I wanted that connected to the mix. And that's why I'm not a huge sub fan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And it's but it is very, very common in smaller studios with simpler setups that you will always see a sub there, and often the sub's on for the entirety of the mix, and it's not doing anyone any favors.
It's tricky, and especially
if you have it, just use it sparingly, occasionally, just as a quick look, and then turn it off.
Yeah. And the tricky thing with that, I don't know if anyone's invented it, but I've seen, the pedals to turn it on and off.
Yeah.
But the issue is that you're supposed to change the crossover in your satellite speakers when the sub's on versus when it's off. So it's kind of tricky to do an A/B.
Some of them route through the sub to do that for you.
Okay, well that's good. So just be aware
ideally,
of that.
But
that if you are going to have the sub off most of the time, make sure that when it's on, your satellite speakers don't need a crossover change.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big danger of it. If you can make it sound big and bassy with a sub, well, you haven't done anything, have you? You need to make it sound big and bassy through the tiniest speaker you can get.
Yeah.
Then you've got a solid foundation.
Remember to like and subscribe.